Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, in the whole culture war of identity politics and how it has permeated our culture, it seems that a study has actually finally bared fruit. And not in a good way for all the SJWs out there. And basically, I got this article from Bounding into Comics. New study suggests woke culture and pandering has had limited impact on LGBT mental health and suicide rates. This is from Spencer Piculi, so shout out to Spencer and Bounding into Comics. So let's get into this. A new study has found that despite the numerous LGBT positive advancements in American society, such shifts in attitude have had limited impact on stress, processes, and mental health for sexual minority people, suggesting that the recent societal focus on woke culture and minority pandering has been less beneficial for the intended recipients that proponents claim. Well, that is quite interesting. The 2016 to 2017 study, conducted by a team of psychologists and sexual orientation specialists, and brought to Bounding into Comics' attention by Gothic Therapy YouTube channel, co-hosts Master of the TDS studied a total of 1,518 LGBT participants, and psychological distress and suicide behavior varied across three distinct classifications of sexual minority people in the United States. According to the researchers' findings across the three groups, labeled Pride, born 56 to 63, Visibility, born 74 to 81, and Equality, born 1990 to 1997, and named after the respective issues facing each specific LGBT generation. Though members of the younger generation were coming out sooner than their predecessors, there were no signs that the improved social environment attenuated their exposure to minority stressors, which included both distal stressors such as violence and discrimination and proximal stressors such as internalized homophobia and expectations of rejection. Psychological distress and suicide behavior also were not improved, and indeed were worse for the younger than the older cohorts. The study shockingly found these findings suggest that changes in societal environment has limited impact on stress processes and mental health for sexually minority people. While research has found that the younger generation had less exposure to such stressors as being hit, beaten, physically attacked, or sexually assaulted, and even attempted robbery, they were also surprised to find that this group claimed to experience more everyday discrimination and internalized homophobia than their older cohorts. To that end, perhaps the most worrying bit of findings, however, is that despite the country becoming more and more accepting and welcoming over the past 65 years, the suicide rate among the LGBT individuals has been on a steady rise, with 30% of the younger cohorts, 24% of the middle, and 21% of the older reported at least one reporting suicide attempts in their lifetimes. In summarizing their work, the researchers asserted that they had found little evidence that social and legal improvements during the last 50 years in the status of sexual minority people have altered their experiences of sexual minority people in terms of exposure to minority stressors and resultant adverse mental health outcomes. Our findings, thus, are consistent with studies that showed that minority stress and health disparities based on sexual orientation have not dissipated despite the significant and social and legal gains of the last decade. In conclusion, the researchers noted that their findings both indicate the extent to which changes in the environment had been limited in their impacts on stress processes and mental health for sexual minority people, and speak to the endurance of cultural ideologies such as homophobia and heterosexism, accompanying rejection and violence toward sexual minorities. So what does all this academic speak mean in regards to woke culture? It's a simple transitive equation, really. As the above study found that LGBT youths are suffering more than their older counterparts, despite the leaps and bounds towards normalization of their lifestyles, it stands to reason that the forced rhetoric and narrative bludgeoning of society by mainstream and social media has done little, if anything, to address the actual problems facing these individuals. Otherwise, the researchers' findings would have been far more positive than they are. Thus, it becomes clear that no matter how many characters are sexually swapped, rebooted as trans, or as a mouthpiece to lecture audiences on social issues, woke culture is more focused on perpetuating itself, and in the process giving more unwarranted power and influence to identity-obsessed bullies than actually doing any tangible good. Basically, what they're saying, folks, is that all this pandering in movies, social media, and in society as a whole has actually harmed the LGBTQ community more than it has helped. All of this stuff that they're doing in movies is harming them or that group, not helping. So it just goes to make you wonder, is Hollywood going to be aware of this study, or are they going to ignore it and continue perpetuating these narratives and continue to harm a group that has been claiming to be victimized for a long time? Well, it seems that they are being victimized by the very people that they are, or that are trying to help them. So yeah, it seems that things are not helping the LGBTQ community. All this pandering all this pandering nonsense, all this virtue signaling, all this race swapping and sexualization and representation. It's not helping them. It's not helping the community. Why do you think people like me and others have actually been against it? Because we saw no value in it. We saw more harm than good. And we've seen more LGBTQ people actually say this isn't interesting to us. We didn't ask for it. We didn't want it. We were happy as is. Anyway, folks, that is going to be the video. You all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you think of this news? Do you find the study to be educative, or do you find it, or educational, sorry, or do you find it bullshit? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below, folks. This has been Orange Hat Reviews. Stay humble.